Chief Hall. I can't hear ya.
Can you hear me?
I can
Yes.
hear you.
Hi.
I haven't seen you for a while. Look at your cute hair.
No, it's been a minute. Just been busy. How are you guys?
Good. So Chief Hall, thank you so much for your time today. So you know me, Lowry, and that's my sweet friend Denita. She is the awesome friend and partner right after George Floyd's murder, when I wanted to get this organization started, Lake Highlands area Moms Against Racism. Denita and I became friends, and I wanted to do it as a partnership. So she got involved, and it's really taken off. It was just a Facebook group in the early summer, and now we're a nonprofit organization and involved in lots of stuff in the community. So we just wanted to have a conversation with you before. Now, how much time before you leave? Are you leaving Dallas?
Yes, I am leaving Dallas. My opportunities are taking me elsewhere.
Are you telling people yet where?
No, not yet. I haven't announced it.
Okay.
Keeping it real close to the vest.
Okay, but you're here a little bit longer, but you have your suit on. Are you still working?
Yeah, I'm still the chief. I'm still the chief until December 31st.
Oh, okay. I was hoping you were getting to take some time off already.
Well, I probably will during the holidays, but yeah, till December 31st, I'm officially still the chief of police for the city of Dallas.
Okay.
Because I was supposed to be gone November 10th, I'm sorry. And the city manager asked me to stay on to finish out some projects and then help them to transition, because it was kind of all of a sudden for me, and try to help them transition. I started to say no, and then I said, okay.
Well, that was nice, but I want you to have some time to relax. I was kind of hoping you were getting to do that already, but
I don't much. I do get to work out a little bit more than I ever have, but there's still a little bit more to do before I'm actually transitioned. Yeah.
Well, I'm thankful that you're able to help like that. I wanted to tell you that when your resignation came out, I was so sad. I know Denita, it was so sad. A lot of people in our group expressed just such admiration for you and such gratitude for you setting such being such a great role model for all of us, especially for women and young Black girls. And I'm going to assemble all of those comments for you so that you take that with you. And also, we got you I'll bring this to you, a lovely basket full of wonderful soaps and things and candles to relax from White Rock Soap Gallery around the corner, because we do want you to get to relax. But Joy is one of our members, and I just thought she summed it up so well. She said, "Thank you, Chief Hall, for being such an amazing example of grace, power, yes, power, women in power, confidence, wow, and poise under pressure." And oh my gosh, the pressure for these 3 years, we just can't imagine. So thank you.
And you know what? And I am just thankful that I was able to be that example. You know, I'm challenged with the fact that we still in 2020 are dealing with firsts. Women have been in law enforcement in other areas for 40, 50, 60 years. And we're still having to say she's the first. And I'm praying that there will be many, many more. Recognizing that my skin color and my gender had a whole lot to do with the challenges. But I don't want that to be the focal point. I want young women to know that regardless to the challenge, that they can get through, they can make it, and their success at the end of all of it. So.
Yeah, so I mean, there were comments wondering like, oh man, we just feel like maybe couldn't break through to the boys, the good old boys club and that kind of thing. But we know you accomplished a lot, and it'll help open the door for other people. You know, one of the things we wanted to ask you. I saw this quote, just when you came into this job, you carried the burden and distinction of being the first woman in this office, but also the first woman of color in this office, the first Black woman. So you kind of mentioned what part of that was a burden for you? What part of being female in this role was a burden? And then I also want you to say what part of that was an asset. So what made being a female, but then I want to break it down in what part of being Black made it hard and an asset.
So I don't find any of it a burden.
Oh,
None of being a woman in the first woman and the first woman of color in a predominantly white male organization was a burden for me. It was actually a blessing, all of it. From the day I became a police officer, it was always challenging for women. You know, women always had to prove that we belonged, that we knew as much as the men, that we were stronger or as strong or stronger, and that we were able to do the job. And in most instances, we're much better at the job. And I'm not saying that because I'm female. I'm saying that because when you have to work twice as hard, when you have to be the best in order to be recognized, you usually come out with much more knowledge, much more ability, much more strength. Because the truth of the matter is the men don't have to prove themselves. They show up and we accept the fact that they're ready for the job because they're men. And that's not always the case. And so none of this was a burden for me. It was a blessing to be able to come into an organization, one that was severely broken. I mean, we won't talk about that. Very antiquated, operating in the 19th century, to be able to come into an organization, improve technology, improve crime fighting, community engagement, focus on officer health and wellness, something that I was able to do that probably wasn't acceptable for men, is to show that softer side and let officers who are stressed. Our job is probably more stressful than most. And coming in when a time that in 2016, 5 officers in the city of Dallas have been killed. So, you know, we're talking about a police department that had emotional challenges. They were broken, pension systems lost. So there was a lot of things that were going on. And so to come in at a time and to be able to focus on them. I'm a praying woman, and I never hid that. I always prayed for my officers. I started praying at command staff meetings, encouraged my officers to focus on themselves and be comfortable with going and seeking help, letting them know that it was okay not to be okay. It's just not okay to stay there. So those kinds of things were a blessing to me to be able to do and to bring 21st century policing to the city of Dallas. No one had ever talked about 21st century policing before I arrived. And so to be able to do those things was truly a blessing. Being a woman, you asked, and being Black, I think that the question should be asked to the community. You know, people ask me, was I treated differently? What do you think? I mean, you know, the truth of the matter is the city of Dallas is very racially divided.
yeah.
The North is white, the South is Black, East and West are Hispanic or Latino. And I'm sure it's not by accident,
No.
but the question is in 2020, why does it still exist? In the subdivision, Lori, that you and I live in, how many Black people live here? And would I live here if I wasn't the chief of police?
Right.
So those are the kinds of questions that we have to ask ourselves when we talk about, you know, was the chief treated differently because she was Black? Well, this city separates people by race, geographically, economically. So why are we surprised if that happens to someone, regardless to the position that they're in? And I think those are the questions we need to ask inwardly and not to the police chief.
But I also see such a gift and an asset in you being Black and in being a woman. And I sure hope that's something we're going to seek again, because just like you were saying, the gifts you brought to the department, I hope will continue, even if it's not led by a woman again, but golly, I want it to be.
Yeah, I do think that being woman and being Black, at a time like this, and I look at, I'm very spiritual, and we go back to the Book of Esther when Mordecai said, "You were chosen for such a time as this." When we think about it, for 40 years, this city was trying to get an oversight board,
Right.
someone to look over the police department's shoulder to make sure that we're doing things right. And I was the first person to come along and say yes to that. Why is that? It's not to say that I think police officers are doing things wrong. I've been in law enforcement 22 years. I know that 99.9% of us do the right thing. But what does it matter if our community doesn't trust that? What does it matter us doing the right thing if people don't believe that we're a legitimate police department? So having that oversight board was so important, and it was challenging, and the activists and the coalitions are very challenging to work with at times. And sometimes I had to step out of who I was in order to work with them, but I did it because it was important. It was truly important for that board to exist, for the legitimacy and trust that the police department has to have. We saw what happened at the end of the summer after George Floyd was killed. People believe that that's who the police are. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter if that's what people believe. And so we
Right.
have to build and create an opportunity for people to see exactly who we are and what we do. So my race and my gender had a lot to do with that, because growing up in the city of Detroit, when and I wasn't born at the time of the '67 riots, but I remember videos and the residual effects of white officers shooting and killing Black men for sport, and what that did to the community for a number of years, and the police department being all white male, and very few Blacks. My father was a police officer in the '60s and was killed in the line of duty, only murder that is unsolved in Detroit's history. And so those are the kinds of things that made me say, we have to do better. We have to be the kind of police department where people trust us, where they believe in us. And so having the opportunity to create those kinds of things, and being at the forefront, even with the civil unrest. I think it's really important that Black Lives Matter, but additionally, the safety of officers matter. And I believe being Black and blue at the same time was very important for the city. And there were things that happened during that time that maybe if we had an opportunity, we assessed ourselves that maybe we should do some things differently, some things not, and not at all. I would protect the officers, this city, these businesses over and over again. No different than I would protect the safety of the community for those who were not a part of the civil unrest. And so just being able to lead and lead a department at that time was important to me. And regardless, you're not going to make everybody happy, and I'm really not here to make anybody happy. I'm here to do my job and keep the city safe. And so I'm just thankful that God gave me an opportunity to do so.
So you said some wonderful things, and some things that I think Larry and I are echo. And so the city manager said this with regards to you. In her 3 years of service, Chief Hall has provided consistent, passionate, resilient, and robust leadership to our city. She has implemented a host of reforms that will assist our department as we move forward. I believe Chief Hall has succeeded in placing DPD on a path of true 21st century policing, and our next chiefs must have the same stout commitment to excellence. So you listed a lot of things that you were happy that you brought about, and that you did them and you completed them. So out of all those things that you mentioned, and some that you did mention, what are you most proud of that you accomplished in these short 3 years?
I think that, when people ask me that, what am I most proud of? I think I'm most proud of bringing to a police department some trust and legitimacy through an oversight board. I'm happy that I was able to complete something that was 40 years in the making. But beyond that, bringing to officers the understanding that you don't have to choose a side, that you don't have to support just police in order to do your job, that in the face of division, you can stand in the middle and agree. We all have some things that we need to work on as a community and as a police department. And I think, leveraging technology and bringing advisory boards to the department, allowing activists, community members, and police officers alike to write our general orders. Those are the things that I'm proud of. I'm proud to say that I was able to bring this community together in a multitude of ways to work alongside of our police departments. And I think that those are the things that 21st century is all about. 21st century policing is about ensuring that if we're going to govern a group of people, we have to have their input. And so, just being able to do that, and to do that through the multitude of the 6 pillars that were laid out by the former president, Obama, I am proud to say that I was able to bring that to a city that had not transitioned to 21st century policing. So I'm very proud of that.
Will you tell us what those 6 pillars are?
The 6 pillars are building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight. They're, hold on one second, let me.
Sure. And this is what he did at the end of the administration with his sharing police reform ideas.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's 6 of them, and I want to put them in order because I always get them out of order. The first one is building trust and legitimacy. 6 pillars, hold on.
I'm sorry, I put you on the spot.
Okay, that's okay. I'm normally having building trust and legitimacy is the first one.
Okay.
Policy and oversight is the second one. Technology and social media is the third one. Community policing and crime prevention, training and education, and then officer safety and wellness. All the things that I talked about. I normally like to get them in order.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned, is that something you think will continue no matter who is is that something that's kind of established now across the board in police departments? That's the standard? That
is the prayer, that most people will follow that. And what Congress is looking to shape is how we police. But one of the things that the Mayor Johnson adopted during the civil unrest and things like that was he, along with many other mayors across the country, did a pledge to 21st century policing, that they would subscribe to 21st century policing in order to ensure that changes that need to be made within police agencies were made. And so that is my prayer, that we will continue. There's a lot that goes into that. When we talk about policy and oversight, it's not just from an oversight board, but we created, under my leadership, an early warning system. And that early warning system, where our associations fight it because they fight everything, but the early warning system, it just documents all officers' behavior. So whether they're in vehicle accidents, whether they're using force, whether they're using sick time, and it does that because it allows their direct supervision to identify when there are patterns and problems before you have 19 incidents of use of force and you kill someone. So if we have a technology system, which we did not, our technology was very antiquated. We have a technology system that allows us to look at our officers and then alert us if in 30 days we have an officer who has had 3 incidents or more. That's just a red flag for the supervisor to call them on the carpet. Not to say that there's something wrong with the officer or the officer's a bad officer. I'll give you an example. In my previous career in Detroit, as a supervisor, I had an officer who in 30 days was in a vehicle accident. He was in a use of force situation and was late to court twice. And so the computer system alerted me to have a sit down with him. Well, what he was experiencing was he and his wife had just had a baby. She was experiencing postpartum. So he was up late at night, having all the responsibility, plus having to get up, go to work, and the stress of the job. And so, agitated, with a whole lot of stress, it was manifesting itself at work. Well, we were able to, by intervening early, we were able then to get him the resources that he needed, get his wife the resources that she needed, and thus creating a smooth transition for him to be able to be stress-free. And that's what our job is, that if we put out a healthy officer, our community is getting a healthy officer, mind, body, and spirit. So those are the kind of things that an early warning system allows us to do for our police officers, not identify them as bad officers, because I don't believe they're bad officers. I think our officers have bad behavior, but it's usually a result of something.
Do you think, and I agree with you, but are there some people that get into it for different reasons, do you think? And is that part of like the process of selection? And Denita's dad was a police officer too. So, what do you think is the main reason most people get into it? And then what could be the negative reason? And is there a way to weed those people out?
And everybody asks us that. I think the majority of officers join because they truly want to make a difference in the community. And they grew up their whole lives wanting, playing cops and robbers and watching Law and Order on television and wanting to make a difference. I really believe that. That's my experience. But you do have those individuals who have all sorts of reasons. You were beat up in high school or elementary school, and now if you get a badge and a gun, you can, get your revenge. People have Napoleon complexes. I'm short, and and there's a plethora of reasons that people could join the police department. Now, what we have in place is we have 5 clinical psychologists on the Dallas Police Department, and you take an extensive psychological exam, but there is no exam for racism. There is no exam that's going to tell you that someone is a bigot. Those things manifest themselves through your actions.
You can look at their Facebook feeds.
Now we do that. Now when you're getting hired, it's no different than anything else. You're going to look at their Twitter and Instagram, and you can look at those things. And if they show up at that time, then you'll see it. But people are smart. If you're applying for a job, you're going to take down anything that's going to keep you from getting that job. But that doesn't mean that it's not within your heart. So that's why it's important for us to have a system that monitors behavior. Because my grandmother used to say, if it's in you, it's going to come out of you. And so it's only a matter of time before who you truly are manifests itself in the work that you do. And so having those,
especially under stress, for sure.
Absolutely. And so there are things that we have, we're putting in place in the academy. One of the things that we recently talked about was when they're going through scenarios, how many people go for the first thing you do is go for your gun. And looking at that, is that your first line of defense? And is that something that you do out of fear? Is it something that we can train against? Or by the end of the 9-month period, if you're still going for your gun, are you right for the Dallas Police Department or any other police department? And the other piece of it is we have to make sure that we do a better job, because we do a good job in Dallas of cultural awareness and implicit bias, because the truth of the matter is people join the police department from many places throughout. We recruit in New York, Chicago, every city in the state of Texas, and Oklahoma, and everywhere else. Now, you come from a rural area where you never saw Black people. and you're not used to Black people. And now you're in a city that has, you know, a very diverse group of people. And all you've ever seen of Black people is the violence on television. They're dope dealers, because that's what they manifest and portray us is on television. And if that's all you see, and you have an innate fear of African Americans, it's a problem. It's a problem. And what we have to do is understand when we're recruiting, who we're recruiting. That is not to say all white males who didn't grow up with around Black people are going to shoot and kill them. But is there an innate fear of Black people? Do you even understand us? I've spoken many times, you know, in my tenure, and I use the example that Black people are very loud. We talk extremely loud. And if you see 2 or 3 Black men standing on a corner, they may be screaming at the top of their lungs, but I guarantee you they're talking about the Cowboys game, or it's just who we are.
Yes.
And even when we're talking to law enforcement or anyone else, we may elevate our voices because that's how we speak. And if your number one go-to is force because you hear an elevated voice, then that's a problem, because we have to understand the culture for which, you know, we're identifying with or interacting with at that particular point in time. So it's about understanding people. And I think once you understand the group and the individuals that you're policing, you have a better result, because we all vary. This city is 43% Hispanic and Latino. And that's why one of the biggest focuses for me was to make sure that the police department was reflective of the community. We went from about 18 or 19% Hispanic to we almost at 25, 26%. And my command staff is 33% Latino or Hispanic. So that was intentional. Not that I selected people because they were Hispanic, but if all things being equal, that individuals were capable of the job, then of course I wanted to make sure that this community was reflected within our police agency. And I think that's important. It has to happen because statistics tell us that people trust people who look like them.
Exactly.
And if we're about building trust, then that's what we have to do.
Where are we on the percentage of Black officers and female officers?
So we're right about 14% women, 14, 15% women. So we have a lot more to do. This city is 50% women. 50% women, 50% men. African Americans, we're right where we should be. The city is about 27, 28, and I think we're about 25% African American on the police department. So we're right where we should be as it relates to African Americans, which is a good thing. But we still have work to do as it relates to our Latino or Hispanic officers.
Denita, I know you have a question.
Yeah, so I have a question. It's one of my favorite questions I ask, and I'm gonna ask it now. And please forgive me, but I have a planning call with Georgia for the Senate race. So I typically ask everyone that are guests of ours, if you had a magic wand and you can grant anything with your magic wand, what would it be? And for you, what would it be as far as the future of policing, period, or the future policing of Dallas? Either or those questions, just fine. Just your wand, you can do whatever you want with it. You can cast your net across the nation if you want to. But the future of policing, and you had that wand.
So with my magic wand, my focus would start in Dallas, but definitely I want it to expand throughout this country, because it is important that the badge I wear is never tarnished. My father lost his life wearing a badge. So honor, integrity, respect, dignity, all of those things are so important. So if I could cast my magic wand, it would just be for us as a country, as a nation, to create opportunities for individuals who are coming in law enforcement to be their very best, to have the best training, the best cultural awareness and implicit bias and various trainings that would allow us to truly understand the communities that we are policing, to make sure that our community understood everything that we do. Because here's the thing, we perish for lack of knowledge. So our community needs to understand what the police do, why we do what we do, and then have an opportunity to find out if there's something they're not comfortable with, how can we do that differently? And so casting my magic wand would create that. But before it could even create that, it would have to deal with the overarching problem of racism, because there are systemic racial systems and within our organizations that really need to be addressed in order for us to truly be the kind of agency and the kind of community that we truly can be and want to be. We have to believe that those systems exist. When we talk about policing, we have to remember that it started as slave patrols. That's why policing was even created. And so we're talking about only being 54, 55 years out of Jim Crow. So if we believe that some of the same mindsets that kept Black people oppressed 54 years ago don't exist today, then we are truly disconnected and tone deaf. And so my magic wand would allow everyone to take off their blinders and to deal with the issues of racism and inequality and systemic issues that plague our governing systems. And I think then we will be able to be harmonious within law enforcement. I would also take my magic wand and remove politics from policing, because they do not go together. They cannot coexist. When we start politicizing policing, that's when we get it wrong, because politics is about who screams the loudest and who can get you elected. Policing is about doing the right thing all the time for the right reason. And so when you put those two together, you're usually going to create havoc and chaos and misfortune for someone. So that
was one of my father's biggest pet peeve. He called it politicking.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm from Mississippi, and I didn't even know it was a word, but that's what they call it. They call it politicking, and he hated it. There would be people in North Greenwood that will call him and say, I need you to come over here and do this and that. And he's like, there's a patrol over there for that. I'm not coming over there, because he started in police as a police officer, and then he ended up being deputy sheriff. So, and people just had him on speed dial. It was like he was their personal watchman. And they would always say, well, Ricky does it. And that was the sheriff at the time, and who's my godfather. And I was like, and he was like, I don't care who said it was okay. And it played a role in, how some of them dealt with their job, because they were leave one area that they're assigned to go over here to this more fluent area, because those are the people that make the most noise and will ultimately end their careers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same. And I do believe that a lot of that took place, whether it's the affluence or it is, right now, Black Lives Matter is the loudest voice we hear. And are we placating to what people want, or are we placating to what is right for everyone? And, and I think that what's important is making the right decisions. Sometimes the right decision doesn't make the people who are the loudest happy, but it's the right decision to make. I mean, I would use my position as a chief. As a chief, my base is the entire city of Dallas. I'm not just the police chief for the officers in the police department. I'm the police chief for every resident in the city of Dallas, and every elected official and every officer. And sometimes my decisions make the officers mad, but it's the best thing for the entire city. And sometimes my decision make politicians mad. But if it's the best thing for the city as a whole, then you have to be willing to stand and do the right thing for the right reason, even if it means that you'll be ostracized by the politicians, by the affluent individuals, and sometimes even by your own police officers.
Right.
Chief Hall, I know we need to respect your time. Can I ask you a couple of the member questions that they passed on? And also I love that you said, and Denita, I know you need to go, I'll see you later. I love that you said you told your officers it's okay to stand in two places. You can believe and say and support Black Lives Matter and be an officer.
Yes.
And I've wanted permission to feel that way myself. That's why I wore my Black Lives Matter shirt, because I feel strongly about that, but I also feel like I want to support good police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I
just kind of want your blessing. Do I have your blessing?
So I would say use me as your blessing. Mm-hmm. I am a Black woman. I've been Black for 49 years. Nothing I can do about that. Okay. And so if you ask me, do Black Lives Matter? They absolutely do. But I am a police officer. And do I believe that there is good police work that happens here in the city of Dallas and all across this country? And I would say absolutely. So I am Black and I am blue. And I am asking others, how is it that we have made it uncomfortable or unacceptable to be both? I do know that some people, some activists will make you believe that if you support the police, then you can't support us. Well, that is absolutely not the truth, because my job is to hold bad police officers, like I said, I don't believe there's bad police officers, bad behavior. Bad behavior holds you accountable. Sometimes that means discipline. Sometimes that means termination. Sometimes that means you go to jail. Okay. And so that is holding them accountable for their actions, but also recognizing that when they do good work, that we have to acknowledge that. And sometimes good work is a result of a use of force that saves lives, and sometimes it may be use of force that takes a life, if it means you're keeping that individual from taking someone else's life. And so we have to understand that. And I just don't subscribe to the fact that you can't stand in the middle and support both sides, holding each accountable for their actions.
Do you feel like most of the officers are comfortable seeing someone wearing a shirt like this? Like, it's not offensive to them? Are they getting that message too, that just because someone is saying and wants police reform doesn't mean we're against you?
So it's hard to push that message, because just like it's hard to push that message with some activists, you have association presidents. The DPA is a huge, pushback for anything that's different than what they're used to. And so sometimes the rhetoric that's spewed by heads of organizations make it very difficult to hear the true message. And so I would say that it's hard to push that message, because you have individuals saying things like, all police officers are racist.
Yeah.
Or if a white officer gets into a shooting with a Black suspect, then the officer is automatically racist. And whether that comes from an activist or it is, pushed by a association member who accuses people of doing that, it breaks down the communication. And I am one who stands there and says, just because two people are of different races doesn't make them racist. Let's look at the circumstances. Every shooting is different. When we look at George Floyd, that was a blatant murder. That individual looked into that camera, pressed down on his neck intentionally with reckless regard for human life. Now, that is not the situation in most shooting incidents. And if we examine all of them across the country, they all have different circumstances surrounding them. Now, I am no way saying all of them are justified or not justified. I'm not saying that. I'm saying look at the circumstances for what they are. and then make the determination. We make people racist before we even know what the circumstances are. Some officers are married to Black women or men, or Latino women or men. And so we've already labeled them before we even know their life, their circumstances. And so it is hard to push that message when the narrative is white racist cops. So it's a lot of work to do internally and externally, for both sides to understand that, one, there's a lot of hurt on both sides, a lot of anger, a lot of hurt on both sides. But we together can heal the pain, and we can work together to get an understanding and build some love and some trust on both sides.
I love talking to you. I feel like together we could make such a big difference, and just it's just talking about it, because you share so much of this. You already knew so much of the stuff that I've been teaching myself this summer and learning about policing. And I just wanted to ask, do you think that bias training and multicultural training is making a difference? Does it help?
I think it does, but before we actually get into the true training, we need to take our temperatures, and that's a cultural assessment. I talked about a cultural assessment back in January when I did my violent crime plan, and I laid it out. Our council was so busy tearing it up that they said, I can't believe you don't know the culture of your police department. No, I'm very well aware of the culture of my police department. The question is, are you? And so we need to take our temperature to find out where we are. We have, as I said before with my magic wand, there are some challenges, some thought processes, some processes and general orders that are in place that are there from a system that was racist from the beginning. I'll give you a perfect example, Lori. I don't know if you remember when Galveston PD showed that the two police officers on horseback were leading a man through downtown Galveston when he was tied with a rope. They were leading him through a rope. Well, it would surprise you to know that most police agencies, especially here in Texas, still had that as a procedure. That's how you escort a prisoner if you're on horseback. Well, that might have been acceptable in the 1940s or the 1930s or 20s, but that is totally unacceptable in 2018, 2019, and 2020. But again, who's looking at the general orders? And then who's looking at that mindset? Because the mindset of the individual who still believed that it was okay to do that. We have to take our temperature and find out, what do we as an individual and as a police department, what do we subscribe to? What is the culture and how do we do those things? And then once we do that, the training then helps, because you have to know where you are in order to move away from it.
It strikes me that so much of what you're talking about, reform in the police department and training, is what we're advocating for in the education system too, is that same bias training with the teachers and finding those laws that are, and rules that are outdated and saying, nope, that doesn't work anymore. And I know that one of the main problems is that police are expected to be too many people to the community and provide safety for mental health, recovering alcoholics, just too many things, homelessness. And is there a way, is the community coming around helping the police department more with that, so that all of that is not on the police?
So I would say that there are some groups who are really stepping up. Councilwoman Gates, who does a really great job. She chairs a domestic violence task force. So they come in and they really assess the entire situation to see how the providers for safety and care of the victims can help the police. But there's a lot more work for the city as a whole to do. And I would say this is elected officials, this is community members, this is everyone, and putting resources and money to assisting those individuals. Because the truth of the matter is, unless we have some place for these individuals to go, it does become a police issue, because that's where people dump it. When you have a problem, you call the police, whether it's some person laying on the ground, someone injured, someone hurt, someone who hadn't taken their meds. You call 911, and there's no one else to show up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So
you would say most police are open, and police departments are open to there being an alternative to that?
Absolutely. Our prayer is to have an alternative, because the truth of the matter is, when we get there, the only option we have is what? Jail. Unless there is a facility to take these individuals to, we have nothing other than an incarceration for them. So when we get there, we need tools. We need tools in our toolbox. And so the prayers that we would not be the people responding, that there would be someone in a crisis to get there and get them shelter, meds, whatever it is that they need, to provide that for them, so that we're not the ones trying to do it, because we don't have those resources around our tool belt.
What's the best way for someone like me to work towards that, to put pressure on people?
I think it's you have a voice. You have a nonprofit organization, and the best way to work toward is figure out what your passion is and what singular focus that you want. If it's whether it's domestic violence, whether it's mental health, homelessness, identify what you want to do. But then you need to show up at your council meetings. You have to show up and say, we want this. Because although here in Lake Highlands and in the subdivision that we live in, we're truly blessed. We hardly ever see, I don't think we see homelessness. We don't have to deal with that here. But everyone else has to. And it's only a matter of time before we have to, because the more homeless people, the more places that they're going to show up. So if there is a demand for us to put the monies where mental health and homelessness and victim services are, we need to make sure that our council is doing that. And, understand that, it's not just a problem when it shows up here in North Dallas, Northeast Dallas. It's a problem even when it doesn't show up here.
Yeah. That's why I like that. I know the term defund police has a negative connotation, and it's why I like the term refund public safety. Like, just rethink how we're doing all of those things that we're expecting you all to do.
And it would, and I think it would surprise most people if they knew that, the city manager, myself, we sat down and at the budget time and figured out ways to reallocate some of the monies from DPD to some of the programs, the service programs. And it wasn't about taking away money from us. It was about how the services that we provide. If we're responding to mental health or homelessness, then take that money that's being poured into us responding away.
Give it to the experts. Yeah.
Give it to the experts and let them do it. And I think the city manager did a really great job this year of trying to lay out a foundational program. There's definitely more that needs to be done, but I think, putting those first steps in place, I think he did a fantastic job.
Chief Hall, you're the best. And I'm really mad that you're leaving now, because I love everything that you've been doing. I hope you've said that your passion is law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping you get to keep working and making these changes somewhere. But I'm really sad.
At this level, I think I'm done with policing for a while. I don't desire to do the chief thing right now. I think there's greater works to be done. I know that for a fact, and I'm looking forward to that at my next location. So
has Joe Biden asked you to be in his cabinet?
Everybody keeps asking me that. You're like the person that asked me that.
Well, because when I first met you, do you remember that silly dream I told you about? Well, I was so excited that you were our new chief of police and you were my neighbor. And I dreamed that I went to greet you and I said, I have a surprise. And I opened the door. And remember who I told you was there to visit you? Oprah and Michelle Obama. And they were like, congratulations. We just wanted to say great job. And I told Dustin and he said, please don't tell her that. That's so embarrassing. But I did. I went up into your garage.
I received that, Lori. I received that. I forgot all about it. I probably had a million things on my mind when you told me, but I do receive that, and we'll just wait and see. How about that?
Because, you know, we just need more women in power making these heartfelt decisions and leading not just with your brain, but with your heart. So
yeah, because these are heart issues. And so I agree with you. And thank you so much. I appreciate everything you've done. You've been so amazing as a neighbor. And I consider you a friend. So thank you.
I hope you get to relax more and do more fun stuff.
I'm going to try. I'm going to try.
What's your number one thing to do for fun?
I actually work out. I love the gym. I love the gym. And so if I can do that 6 or 7 days a week, I'd be fine.
Well, good for you. Well, I'm going to bring you this gift set and you enjoy relaxing in the tub sometime.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too. I'll see you later. Bye.